Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Fintech Ki Baat Dil Se. Today we have with us Ruchir Kanakia, founder and CEO of OneAssure, an insurtech platform that aims to simplify the distribution of insurance across the country. Hey Ruchir, thank you so much for joining us and for your valuable time. Pleasure having you here.
Thanks, Shreyas. Thanks for having me here.
Great, great. So, Ruchir has been somewhat of a serial entrepreneur, and he has also worked closely with a lot of big startups that we have heard today, like Uber and so on. So, Ruchir, over to you. Would want to understand your professional journey. How did you begin? How did you probably get into joining your first startup? फिर वहां से when did the entrepreneurship bug bite you, and how did you pick that up? So, over
So,
to
okay.
you.
So I'll just correct one thing, right? I'm not a serial entrepreneur. This is going to be effectively, I pivoted into building this business after my first business, but the insights came to build this business out of my first business.
Okay.
Second thing is about my background. I've been an engineer, went to work for a financial services conglomerate. And once I worked for a financial services conglomerate, I realized in 6 months that I was not meant for corporates. Quickly joined a startup back in the day called Exotel as a founding team member. One of the
Wow.
folk we joined. I
The
joined.
travel startup, right?
No, it's in cloud telephony.
Okay.
Uh, so joined them at a stage where we could pay either our vendors or we could pay ourselves. So that was the stage when I joined them. Spent the next 2.5 years bootstrap building the company with the founders. Had a front row seat, so saw the fundraising journey very closely. And the founders were kind enough to tag me in some of these meetings. So that's where my experience started. Post that, moved to
Mhm.
Instamojo as a first business hire, and then went on to lead business for Instamojo for about 3 years. And in my last
Awesome.
stint, I was at QMath in the founder's office first, and then went on to head business. Then I built a company trying to sell software to insurance companies, which did not pan out, and then pivoted to OneAssure.
Got it. Got it. Awesome, yeah. Awesome. So, let's talk a bit about like from working with a lot of startups. What was it that actually made you say कि यार अभी खुद का कुछ करना है? Like, did you see the journey and were you like were there some takeaways that made you say कि यार this is also something that I want to do. I want to build something of my own.
See, after my first job, one realization came very quickly is that I don't want to work for a large company or a corporate to start with.
Hmm.
So the other option was to go work for a startup. Now,
Yeah.
when even at that point in time, I could have started anytime during the tenure, but
Hmm.
waited until when I felt confident and was very clear of what I wanted to build and how I wanted to go about building it, right?
Got it.
And took the plunge after about 7 years after
After
working for
7 years of startup experience.
yes, took the plunge finally after 7 years of startup experience.
Awesome. So, what made you confident here? This is the time, or was it just a gut feeling that made you say कि नहीं यार
Hmm,
अभी करना
yeah,
है?
gutty hai, to some extent. Anyone who says otherwise is see, it was also about time ki I had seen founders in diverse sectors, and some of these founders are my mentors even today, right?
Mhm.
And always the idea, if you ask them even now what I had told them, what were my long-term plans when I interviewed for some of these companies, they all will say I had said that I wanted to start up on my own.
Awesome, awesome. तो वो क्लैरिटी थी कि खुद का तो कुछ करना ही है. कब
Perfect. That
करना है was a
clear.
gut feeling.
Yeah. And it also felt at the right time where I said I had seen enough to understand uh, what I want to build, why I want to build, what my core strengths were personally, and what I could pull off, right? That is super critical. Most people don't
Correct.
realize what their core strengths are.
That
And
takes a long, long time for some people.
once you know that what your core strengths are, you have to find a business where you play to your advantage, right, at an early stage. Otherwise,
Right.
it's impossible to build a business from that perspective. That's when I
Definitely.
decided, frankly, and it was also around the time where I didn't want to go work for another startup after having worked for three founders, amazing founders in my career.
Ruchir, while you were working with the founders, I'm assuming you work quite closely with them. And I think when you work closely with founders, you see the good and bad sides of
Yeah, yeah.
starting up, right?
So,
So,
Sagrika, I'll tell you one thing: if you can't figure out what to do, you will figure out what not to do.
That's
Okay.
true. That's true.
So, what to do or what is the right way to go about things is always going to be an experiment in, or it will always be in progress. But what mistakes not to make is what you realize. And yeah, that is very crucial when you're building your own business or your own company or your
Fair
startup.
enough.
डेफिनेटली डेफिनेटली कुछ नहीं तो ये समझ में आ जाएगा कि क्या चीजें नहीं करनी चाहिए.
Perfect.
बिल्कुल.
वही है. And then you have to have the patience and perseverance to like plumb and build. That's it.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल. सो चलो ये तो आपको समझ में आ गया कि व्हेन डिड यू वांट टू स्टार्ट अप, जो गट फीलिंग था और आपको पता था कि आपको स्टार्ट करना है, बट हाउ डिड यू फिगर आउट कि यही करना है? लाइक हाउ डिड इंश्योरेंस स्ट्राइक अ कॉर्ड?
Yeah, देखो, it goes back to let me talk to you a little bit about my background, right? I come from a Gujarati family. तो है ना, गुजराती फैमिली में है ना, मार्जिन्स और कैश फ्लो है ना, आर टिपिकली द डिनर एंड लंच कॉन्वर्सेशंस. एंड from 20 years when you are brought up in a business
True,
family, you tend to hear this
true.
day in, day out. Whether you can block yourself by putting earplugs, but effectively you're still absorbing all of this. One thing
True.
I realized was that insurance बहुत underpenetrated था, and any market which is underpenetrated will tend to have high margins initially. Until
हम्म.
penetration expands, where the margin pressure then begins, and then commoditization of that market will happen. And
बिल्कुल.
that's why I decided that insurance was that market for me when I was evaluating it. It's not that I did not think about other spaces to start up in, and I did not evaluate other ideas, but
हम्म.
this sort of like made sense to me internally.
Right. Fair enough. So, I mean, identifying the right problem statement was more of a logical point of view, जहाँ पे you were seeing कि where exactly would be the higher profits or higher margins in the initial days. In contrast to looking at a few other founders जहाँ पे कि यार बस यही पेन पॉइंट है, लाइफ में कुछ स्टोरी हुई थी इसके आसपास है, मुझे यही सॉल्व करना है. लाइक then they forget everything else. धंधा भूल जाता है. It's more about a very passion
नहीं
driven
यार, मेरे
approach.
लिए उल्टा है. अगर मुझे धंधा दिखता नहीं है तो फिर आई डोंट थिंक सो. फिर प्रॉब्लम कितना भी बड़ा हो, मेरे दिमाग में बहुत क्लियर है कि इस इफ आई सॉल्व दैट प्रॉब्लम, इज समवन विलिंग टू पे फॉर इट, एंड इफ समवन's willing to pay for it, can I cover my cost and make some money out of it?
Got it, got it. So that's actually a fresh perspective, and one of the few reasons why I feel कि a lot of early stage startups either fizzle out and die or probably turn into cash burning monstrosities is because they're trying to solve for a problem statement that either cannot be monetized that easily, or it's just it's fueled by passion, but logic is somewhere lacking behind.
It's actually so. I don't know. So I'm pretty much neutral about it. Certain products should exist now, and I guess they'll figure out monetization later on. But in India, seldom I've seen that not working out. So if you're building globally based out of India and you're banking, you're building the way you're saying, Shreyas, then it works out most of the times. Like at least you have a chance of 5 to 7 out of 10 times for it to work out for two reasons. Most people in these
That's
mature
high.
markets,
Okay.
most people in the mature markets have the per capita income to afford your product, and if you're solving a problem, then they are ready to pay for convenience, and they are not value conscious; they're time conscious.
Right.
So that's where the difference is, right? And they like to enjoy the quality of life, and hence they will pay that amount. In India, we've still not become time conscious. We are getting there,
Agreed,
but I don't
agreed.
think we are there yet today.
So
That's
does
how
that mean, does that mean in India, there is a slightly lower chance of success of people who are not thinking from a dhanda mindset from the beginning, or from a profit mindset or a revenue mindset from the beginning?
Yeah, Malav, I guess you can take a look at all the numbers for the last 7, 8 years. I guess a lot of this data you can collate, and you will see that most of the companies who failed would have failed to monetize, or they didn't have a sustainable model. Where, yeah, the core of the business is to, yeah, the reason why you start a business is to make money. You don't start a business to
Right.
lose money, and that
True.
you have to have a plan to turn that around.
Mm-hmm.
Then it completely depends on the founder's ability to raise money rather than anything else.
Agreed. कितना
So
story sell करके कितना fund raise कर सकते हैं, then it
yes,
ultimately boils down to that.
it boils down to that.
Fair enough, sir. Fair enough. Sagrika, anything from your end? Do you have any questions?
So when you talk about the dhanda mindset, Ruchir, and with this, when you go to raise money with from VCs, right? How difficult or easy it is, because I've seen a lot of people. It's a fix, right? कि अगर धंधा करना है तो आपको पहले एक पर्टिकुलर सेगमेंट पे फोकस करना होगा जहाँ से पैसे बन रहे हैं. एंड वाइल ऑन द वीसी एंड यू हैव टू सेल द बिगर पिक्चर ऑफ द स्टोरी कि आप डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन कैसे बढ़ाओगे, विच इज ऑटोमेटिकली अ कैश बर्निंग thing that you are planning to do, right? So how easy or difficult is it when you go to
That
VCs?
so let's just so there are different kind of people who can give who you can raise capital from, right?
Yeah.
Most VCs want to see $1 billion outcome in most companies they
Yeah.
invest in, right? So they think from that perspective. But you have micro VCs, you have angels, you have also growth capital available where the
Yeah.
bar for them, they want companies to churn out money and they want those companies and they want to fuel that growth. They are okay with a sub $500 million outcome or $100 to $500 million outcome as well if they get in at $10 million, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
completely depends on who do you decide to raise money from. So I would now like the kind of people you can raise money from has also diversified over the last 7 8 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You have a lot more people and a lot more family offices of a lot of conglomerates or erstwhile traditional businesses who are now excited to invest, right? And that is patient capital because they invest their own capital and they don't need to answer to an LP where they have to return some
Yeah.
money in 7 to 10 years. So from that perspective, it's a business's call. You're right. So when you don't invest in anything comes at a cost, right? So if you don't are not able to raise more money, you will not be able to grow 5x to 6x.
Yeah.
You'll grow maybe 2x to 3x every year. That's the cost, and it'll take you longer to build a business rather than shorter. Now it may not work for businesses where it's a winner takes it all market, but there are a lot of businesses where there can be multiple players who can coexist and survive and thrive, right? Because the opportunity in India is large.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be very clear whether you're a VC fundable company or whether when you want to raise money from a VC. Assume you're starting a clock for yourself the moment you raise money from a fund, right? Because they have to return their capital anywhere in 7 to 10 years.
True.
And with this mindset, which is the best way to go while you're raising money? Like you
There is
mentioned,
no
like
right answer here. I'm also trying to figure it
fair
out, learning from
enough.
other entrepreneurs and my mentors. And I have some little success of some folks who had belief in me where they invested in my business.
Uh, you know, Something that really intrigues me right now is when you talk about revenue-based building from a revenue point of view versus building for valuation. So, do you think like once you start raising from actual VCs and not just angels, at that point of time you are probably either just by a consequence pushed to build for valuation rather than build for sustainability, or do they go hand in hand?
Like I said, right? So then it depends, right? If you are raising from a VC, then you have to basically build from a valuation standpoint, right? Because when you have someone owning a significant minority share of your company, they come in with certain expectation, which is return on capital, right?
True, true.
So they want you to take bold bets. They want you to do bold experiments as well, right? That's why they're giving you that capital. They don't want their capital sitting in the bank account where you're earning interest out of it and then running your business. So yeah, it goes
Right.
hand in hand, right? So in that case, right, as a founder, you're smart enough to understand this. That when you raise from someone like that, you need to basically go ahead and give them a return down the line.
Got it. A hypothetical question, right? In a situation where you are offered a few term sheets and you figure out that the most lucrative valuation or most lucrative offer that has been offered to you is coming from a VC where your mindset doesn't fit, or where you know that there could be a clash of vision or clash of the way you would like to run the company versus the way you feel that they would essentially want the company to be run. So, what would be a wise choice in that situation? Like, if you do you take up that money, or do you kind of
Depends on the
dilute your
stage of
value
the company.
for the lower
Depends
offer?
on the stage of the company, right? Let me answer this very differently. If your
Sure.
business model and your unit economics and everything is figured out, then the person who's giving you the best valuation is the one you should go, because the rest of the things, your interests are aligned. They need more money on the capital, right? That's the unsaid rule, right? And if you have that engine which is going to be able to do that for you, then go where the terms are the best, right?
Got it.
Because then it's less, if they're making money, they're not going to, they also don't want to push you in a direction where they have a chance of losing money, that money as well,
True,
right?
true.
But if it's at an early stage where you have not figured out your PMF, which is typically a pre-seed, seed, up to pre-series A sort of companies, then in that case you should ideally walk away from such a term sheet.
Unfavorable term sheets. Got it.
Because see, if you can't, then you will always have issues, right? Because if you don't align with this partner and and you are not on the same page, then you're always going to be at each other's loggerheads. That's one additional problem to take care of, in addition to the 100 problems you have every day building a business as an entrepreneur, right? Because that's the last problem you should be thinking about.
Definitely. That does make sense, right? At early stage, you would probably want to build it your way and at least reach a certain stage wherein you have a certain engine that is going to drive revenue. And once you hit that, even if there's a difference of opinion, ultimately, if you are able to generate capital to the engine that you have built, you're confident about it, you can still figure out a way to do it your way and then give them the
Perfect.
returns that they want. Fair
Exactly
enough.
right.
That makes a lot of sense. Sagarika, before we pivot on to the business side of things and talk a bit more about insurance and deep dive into that, anything from your end on this piece?
I'm good, Tress.
Awesome, awesome. So the VC conversation was, really insightful. I think we probably learned a lot about how the investment goes and what kind of mentality should you have at depending on the stage you are at. Now let's talk a bit more about insurance as a sector in the country, and probably one of the first questions that comes to my mind, which is probably what everyone would have asked you. When you look at insurance in India, right? So I recently did an episode with Amit Bori, who's the founder of InsureEdit, right? They are building an API layer on the backend. And he said was something interesting, and I probably would want to, hear your opinion on it as well. So when we say, so earlier I was of the opinion that when you say India is 96 or 97% underpenetrated or that, but I was given a different perspective by Mr. Amit, wherein he said it's more about talking about the contribution of insurance to GDP, and essentially that is how insurance penetration is measured. So, would want to hear your view on how do you essentially look at this statistic and when you look at the penetration of insurance in India.
Two things, right? I guess penetration of insurance in India is a public data, right? IRDA
Yeah.
publishes a report every day, every year. Annually, you can download and you can figure it out yourself. They also do a good job of benchmarking India with other countries also. And some of them do as a percentage of GDP. Some of them would give a metric on how many people in India actually have insurance policies, right? Or own some kind of insurance, right? So it completely depends on how you want to take a look at it, right? Because we're at a very nascent stage in India when it comes to insurance as well, right? Most of us don't understand or uh, are are not clear about what insurance is, especially if you speak to someone in tier 2, tier 3 cities. They think
Right.
insurance is an expense and not an investment. So the concept
True.
itself has not, and we have a mindset that mindset needs to be broken first for the penetration to increase, which means a lot more money should go in creating awareness and spreading that across the board.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. Something that really came to light, when I was having these conversations, and after that, I was pushed to do some research to figure out like why my perspective was so skewed when I thought that only 3% of Indians have a health insurance policy. I actually figured out that around 30 to 40% of Indians do have some kind of the general insurance product, if not a health insurance policy. So, I mean, that essentially completely changed the perspective, right? From feeling that 96% के पास तो कुछ है ही नहीं, to at least 30% of India has some kind of general insurance policy. And probably vehicle insurance would be 60 to 70% of it, or two-wheeler insurance, at least in the urban areas. So considering that, you could still say around 10 to 15% of India would have some kind of health insurance. Is that a right
Yeah,
assumption?
man. Yeah, so let's break it down, right? Like government have their schemes, which is the central government. Then state governments have their schemes. Then you have employee state insurance corporation, where anyone making below 22,000 rupees per month typically gets that insurance. So we have insurance coverage. It's just that most people don't know how to utilize, where to utilize, what to do with it, and
Got it.
when is it applicable, when is it not applicable.
Understood. And a lot of people probably don't even know they are covered because I think many people got covered under the Pradhan Mantri Bima Yojana when they took that PM JDY, and half of them, like not even half, more than half of them don't even know कि वो लोग covered है उसमें.
Yes, that is the problem, right? And how do you now go ahead and use that cover? Whom do you reach out to? Where do I go to claim? What do I say to the hospital when I'm getting trying to get admitted? All of these are the questions which are unanswered. There like the answers are there if you try to find them out, but is they're too difficult to find, is what I'm trying to say.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, like, let's kind of pivot the conversation to one assure and essentially how are you building your distribution model around
Yeah, so
insurance?
for us, what has been critical is to enable individuals to buy health insurance. And that too, we focus on the retail side of the business, which is the insurance you would buy for yourself and claim under ATD as tax benefits. And the way we look at it is that, especially health is a LTV product where we think that we want to ensure that the customers are sold the right product with the right declarations,
Right.
in a sense that if you have a medical history, not declaring it causes a bad claims experience. Now, when you think about insurance as a product, the only experience is the claims experience. Otherwise, you're buying a PDF for which you're paying 10, 15 grand a month, a year, roughly.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, and the claim, typically you will end up claiming once in 3 to 4 years as a family. Right. So the focus needs to be more on that you're buying it so that tomorrow, if the need comes and you get admitted to the hospital, then you don't have to dig into your savings to pay for your hospitalization cost, and the insurance company takes care of it. Right.
Got it.
For us, the idea is we've aligned ourselves with distributors because see, health insurance as a product is ever evolving. Right. It's like because medical science is ever evolving, new
True.
conditions, new treatments get invented every year. They get added to they get commercialized and then get added to insurance plans, and this continues, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
And that is the reason why every year the idea should be to review your insurance plan. You can imagine someone in the US who does not have insurance has nightmares, right? Because he
Tell me
fears
about
that
it.
going into a emergency room is going to put him back by $1,000 straight up.
Yeah.
So that mindset yet is not coming. So because we are a large country and we have that many people, also the cost of medicine and hospitalization is one of the lowest in the world in India, right? But
True.
that is also slowly increasing.
Sorry. Yeah. So no, I think that makes sense. But when you look at India as a entire country, right? So what would you say your initial target market would be, for the insurance distribution piece? And then it's a two-part question. So secondly, if you were to target at some point of time, if you're currently not the tier 3 and tier 4 areas, how would you plan a distribution in those areas?
Two things, right? Like our distribution strategy is to enable other folks, right, who want to take care of Shreyas. Is like one persona which we very closely work with is wealth managers or financial planners, financial advisors. These are folks who you typically give your surplus where they enable you to park it into an mutual fund or some other investment layer based on your needs. Now, in these guys are concerned about you for the long term. They don't have a short term view about you, Shreyas. And most
Yeah.
consumers don't understand that the intermediary should have a long term view. That's when it's a win win, especially when
True.
it comes to health insurance. It's not that you bought a product like in motor insurance, this does not matter because you're dependent on the OEM or the guy or your service center guy to take care of your asset, right? Like if your bike or car gets damaged, you will take it to the nearest service center
True.
and fix it. But when it comes to health, when it comes to a lot of these things, then it's a legal contract where there are conditions are going to be added throughout the next 10, 15, 20 years, based on advances in medical science, based on terms and conditions, based on new diseases which get discovered. All of those things matter, right? So the right people are people who are interested for you to succeed in the long term, and
True.
they are the right people to buy insurance from. We enable all of these right kind of people. What we figured out is wealth managers, financial planners are one, because they don't like anyone sending a redemption request because their AUMs
Mhm.
drop. Right? Effectively, the more money invested with them is the more money they make out of the trail,
Right.
based on the
You get a
asset.
trailing float as well. Yes.
Yeah, based on the asset class you invest in, whether it's mutual fund, gold, or any other asset class which you invest in. So they are interested to keep you and keep your interest at heart from a long-term perspective. So
Got it.
most people struggle to figure out who's the right person to buy it from, and then they end up making the wrong decision, which they only correct at a later point in time, or they realize only point at a later point in time.
Got it. Got it. Sagarika, you were
Uh,
saying something.
yeah. So, Ruchir, while you're approaching these financial managers and all of these personas, right? What is the awareness that a person has when these people are buying insurance for them, and at the moment, and when they are standing at the moment of truth, are they even aware about the fact that they
So
have
you'll be
insurance?
surprised that the kind of a lot of folks who are even educated don't invest in insurance, like who have MBA degrees, and
Fair
we've
enough. Yeah,
catered
yeah.
to such customers as well, right? They realize only at a much later point in time that they need to make this investment. So that's where the entire challenge is, right? Because most of us don't wake up in the morning to buy insurance, right? And we've not gotten as a to a state as a country where the healthcare costs are like very expensive,
Mm.
but we are getting there. So and that's where you see a lot of folks now being aware, and now they want to understand. And typically, if you think about it from a financial planning perspective, it is part of your protection layer, which consists of health and term insurance.
Got it.
These are the two products. Typically, in most other countries, you will see people invest in health and term insurance, and then they move and start investing in other asset classes. In India, that unfortunately that does not happen. So you end up buying gold, or you end up investing in some other asset class, and you jump the gun by investing in the investment layer first before you build your protection layer.
So I think that kind of awareness is not there in India. Ki what is the hierarchy of investing, right? You
Yes,
start with your basics, and then you create what do you say? It's what it's called the emergency fund, right? You create an emergency fund, and then you build
perfect,
your insurance protection. It's basically a part of the emergency fund creation, and then you start investing, right?
perfect.
So that is probably even I actually heard of it when I was using one of the investing apps, and they're like, "What emergency fund do you have?" And I'm like, "What emergency fund? What is an emergency fund?" Then I actually went
Yep.
back, googled it, and then I figured out, यार ये सब पहले groundwork करना पड़ता है, फिर तुम आगे बढ़ो. Because होता क्या है, like normally, speaking of at least tier 1, tier 2 areas, right? People get a job, they start earning well at some point, and they're like, यार चलो अभी थोड़ा invest करो, थोड़ा बाकी का उड़ा दो, like 20% invest करो and 80% उड़ा दो, because there's a thumb rule that's floating around the internet saying कि 20% invest करना चाहिए and बाकी का you can use. So you start following that, but before you do that, you don't realize that you have to at least create a 1 year worth of buffer. You have to create that protection
Yep.
layer. You have to have your health. You have to have your term insurance in place. उसके बाद you start investing. So that I think very few people actually know. And even in my friend circle, when I speak to people and I'm like, okay, so you have your funds and emergency fund, ऐसे तो क्या होता है वो भाई? I'm like, why are you investing right now? मतलब तू म्यूचुअल फंड में डाल रहा है पैसा, आ गया तो तेरा पूरा सेविंग्स है. You don't have any emergency fund in the back end to help you if you like in the end if you fuck up somewhere or you leave your job. So like me, then I'm like, you have to build that, right? So even at this layer, I mean, even in urban areas, these kind of awareness is not there.
I agree with you.
But then in this case, like, who do you think should essentially or would be the right person to take up the onus to actually create this awareness? Because 10% awareness hoga is what my assumption or a guesstimate is.
Yeah. The best way to do this is when people close to you enable you, or people whom you trust, and people who have your long-term interest at heart. And if you enable these guys to do this, they will go
Mhm.
ahead and like spread the word. And then I think there'll be a time where most of us will know what to expect out of a health insurance policy when we buy one, right?
Right.
And then once those terms and everything becomes standardized, like if you ask half the people in India, they won't know what a deductible is. Whereas if you ask the
Mhm.
same thing to anyone in the US, everyone will know what a deductible is. So
True.
certain terms, certain things need to be become the norm for you to like then and that sort of awareness I see that it will happen over the next 5 to 7 years.
But on a large scale, how do you like? How do you foresee this happening?
Yeah, going direct to consumer and consumer side approaches is like very expensive. So it will happen when you create content. It will happen when you enable people who are around you who can reach out to more people and you form a chain, right? And that's how people
Mhm.
get to know about it. And then we like to see what our peers are doing, and we keep more track as an individual about what they are doing. And when they
True.
invest, we come under peer pressure to invest. So
Mhm.
I guess this sort of peer pressure will help at some point in time, right?
Uh, yeah, yeah, agreed, agreed. Like the reason I came to know is one of our friends who's also a founder suggested one of the apps that he was using to invest. वो Satyen Kothari, the Cube Wealth app. So
Hmm.
उसमें they were like कि please enter your this thing emergency fund कितना है उसके बाद हम suggest करेंगे. So that is when I was like कि नहीं okay you need to build, right. So that essentially came in from these things like peer pressure is one of the things. But do you think a campaign? I mean, this is just pure speculation, right? Do you
Hmm.
think a campaign similar to what Modi did for some other products would actually help, like TV पे आके talking about this कि ये करो वो करो ये होता है and all of that? Will that
That'll
actually
help.
help or वो it'll just go over people's heads? Like,
No, it'll help, yeah. Shreyas, I'm not saying it won't help. It will help. Stuff
Mhm.
like that only helps spread the word, and most people need to be aware of certain things. And there's a
Definitely.
learning curve for everyone as well, right? Like you saw, like back in 2010, 2011, how many people actually had demat accounts, and look at the number today. Simply put, and I guess 7 years or 8 years, hopefully from now, we can talk of similar numbers in terms of insurance penetration or
Insurance
number of
policy.
people who own insurance policies in the country.
True, true, true.
So in that case, is insurance a product that you can speak about in a single campaign and get done with, right? It's not that kind of a product.
Sorry.
Insurance a product which you can speak about in one campaign and get done with, right? That
No, yeah, it'll
it's
have to
it's
be
not.
reinforced again and again, again and
Very
again, again.
complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated as a product, and it'll have to be reinforced again and again, right? You see, most of us, right? When the markets are doing well, everyone wants to invest, and when markets don't do well, people try to pull out. They have a bad experience, they don't go back to investing in
Yeah,
markets.
yeah.
Similar stuff is with insurance. If insurance is not
And I think
sold,
with insurance, the major problem is you don't get any immediate benefits like we do in markets.
yep. So you don't see immediate. How do you take care of like you don't see immediate gratification, right? Uh,
Yeah.
Exactly.
when you buy something, you buy a new phone, you feel it, and you touch it, and you enjoy it, and that novelty takes 2 months or 3 months to wear off.
True.
Whereas in insurance, that is not the case.
Tangible है ही नहीं कुछ. Agreed.
Uh,
But then I think something like an insurance सही है kind of a campaign will probably be helpful. जो mutual fund है पिछले 5 साल में sustainably वो constant bombarding करके now you hear almost everyone talking about mutual funds even in trains, right? Compared to
yes,
5 years back.
I agree with you. So something similar should happen. Hopefully, folks can get together and do something, and it'll help the industry itself, right? It'll help
बिल्कुल.
create awareness.
True, true. And one final question from an industry overview perspective, do you think if we want to as a country be at least 100% insured on health insurance side, do you think the existing products is one size fit all when you go to the lower strata of society or when you go to the, let's say, the rural areas and tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, the villages? Do you think it's a one size fit all, or do you think there should be some product innovation from the point of view of
Yeah,
the way the
definitely.
product is constructed?
See, here we are in the era of personalization, right? So
Right.
based on your needs, based on your persona, based on your there has to trickle down some sort of personalization, right?
Mm-hmm.
And based on that, I guess new companies will evolve who will find a niche there and will build a business and drive penetration. These companies will then engage with distributors who can work in those areas to create awareness and then together, like, increase the penetration. And that's how I think so it'll evolve. I definitely think that it's not going to be one product which will fit the entire country. Our needs are
Got it.
different.
Got it. Got it. Nee, I completely agree with you. I think there are few product innovations that are needed. Also,
Yes,
what I
agreed.
feel is some kind of distribution innovation from the point of view of where insurance is embedded, so that it's not a conscious decision, right? Even though it's a big ticket size, relatively big ticket size, right? Like even if you kind of simplify the cover and like reduce the amount, it could still amount to around 5 to 10,000 worth of yearly expense. So it, I mean, there has to
See,
be a
I'm
embedded.
all in for embedding it, but
Mhm.
there is also a question, right? Embedding it is effectively people not knowing that they have insurance. If they don't know what they have, they will not know how to
True.
claim, and if they don't know how to claim, they will not see any value. It's like
Mhm.
most of them don't even know they have bought it, right?
Got it.
And that's where the challenge is right now. How do you enable that and
Fair enough.
this is more like a mindset change which will take time, right, to happen, where some of these campaigns you mentioned, if they are done, it'll happen slowly and it will trickle down. And the second thing which will push is the cost of healthcare being so high these days, private healthcare, that
Mhm.
a normal guy who comes out of TCS, his salary is not increased by more than 30% to 40% in the last decade, but the healthcare expenses are 2x to 3x in case of hospitalization in
True.
a private
True.
hospital. So at some point in time, the pinch will be felt when there is pain, right? Humans
Mhm.
try to find solutions, right? And
Agree.
they'll figure it out. Most of us will figure it out at that point.
Agreed. Agreed. Pain is probably the most impactful trigger for change.
Yes.
I think no, that makes sense. That makes sense. One final question, from an entrepreneurship perspective, when you look, so a lot of our audiences are aspiring founders or early stage founders. So, from your experience working with a lot of startups and building two of your own, any learnings or any don'ts, I would say, because do's to bahut sare hai, but any specific don'ts that you would want to advise these guys?
Yeah, so be very clear uh, why you're doing what you're doing. वो clarity है ना, most people don't think about this question enough, and they
Hmm.
plunge into it, and then they are overwhelmed,
Right.
right? Right. So be very clear why you're doing what you're doing, and if it and be okay with either of the outcomes, right? I've personally learned, a fellow entrepreneur helped me understand that you should be okay with losing everything. Like the company can go down any day or it can go up, right? And you should be cognizant of both of these scenarios. That'll keep you grounded.
Got it. Got it. So clarity and being a realist probably outterm that thing as
How
is.
the clarity should be there, ki why you're doing what
Mhm.
you're doing and how much time you want to invest. And one more thing I would say is that your time is also your investment in the company, which
True.
most of us, or even I would say that uh, uh, this entrepreneur made me realize ki I should be every year which I am putting into the company where I'm not drawing a salary or where the business is not happening, I'm actually investing a lot more in terms of my time and my effort because I'm not making the money I could have made by working for someone else.
Exactly. Exactly. The opportunity cost is immense.
Opportunity cost, and most of us don't realize that, right? And so
Definitely.
and clarity, right? Like you started the conversation, right? Where whether you're building it for valuation or whether you're building it for a revenue focused business,
Mhm.
both have very different paths to build.
Agreed. Agreed. I think no. With that note, that was really insightful, and I think it was a pleasure having you here, Ruchir. I think we learned a lot on the how to build a business to insurance. I think it was a lot of learning. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Shreyas. Thanks, Agrika.
Thanks, Richard.